Okay, it's 11:30. We are officially starting.
I have a quick announcement. Is that okay?
Okay, we have a couple of quick announcements. So for networking coming up, I really want to give you as much heads up as you can as far as events that'll count towards your networking. I had mentioned in the syllabus that Rev Road has a whole bunch of events down in Provo. They are on Freedom Boulevard, just a little bit south of Denny's on the other side of the road in Provo. If you go down the diagonal, there's Denny's. You go a little further south, there's an old Jiffy Lube where it was. They're in that building. They have every Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock a 1 million cups workshop where if you're building a business, they'll have two businesses present on what they're doing and what help they need. And then they also, the first Thursday of every month, they have a luncheon meeting and they have a guest speaker coming in. So that'll be will be this Thursday. This Thursday at 11 o'clock, you get lunch, you get a speaker, you get great information. It's worth it to go for it if you can. That counts as a networking event. So those are automatic every Wednesday, every first Thursday of the month. Okay, Brianna's got some announcements to make, and then Camden has some announcements to make.
Thank you. Hi, Camden. So actually, 1 Million Cups is moving over to BRC in September. So I believe this is the last one over at Rev Road. That's what I believe. Okay. But what I want to share is that the Entrepreneurship Institute is having our fall kickoff event tomorrow from 2 to 3:30 in the Science Atrium across from the doTERRA Auditorium. There will be giveaways. We will have partners with tables highlighting some of the resources that they offer. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's a great informative event to understand how the Entrepreneurship Institute can help you, how you can get funding from us, how you can get mentoring, and how you can get connected into the entrepreneurial ecosystem on campus as well as off campus. So I highly encourage you to attend. We're giving away a fun Pixie drone, which takes pictures of you. It's really, really neat. So definitely stop by and enjoy that event. And there will be food.
And that is going to be, one more time, when and where?
2 to 3:30 tomorrow in the Science Atrium.
Okay, got it? Excellent. Okay, Camden, come on up. Camden was one of our students. I worked with him at the Entrepreneurship Institute. Now he's a very successful entrepreneur that has like 6 businesses going. Go for it.
Cool. Hey, everybody. I was here, it feels like just yesterday. But now I am trying to pass down the ladder. So we have a startup con going on next week, Friday and Saturday here at UVU. It is based on basically all the very bare minimum basics of starting a business. If you've got questions on how to start your LLC, networking, what does it mean to set up a QuickBooks account, things like that, we are going to hit that with speakers, sponsored booths, plenty of food, all that kind of stuff. So it's next week. Mark your calendars. Next week, Friday the 9th and Saturday the 10th. So it's a 2-day event. It's in the ballroom here. So Friday and Saturday next week, ballroom. Times and things like that we're going to post on Canvas, I believe. Didn't she say? Yeah. So it'll be on Canvas, but that'll be for extra credit. I've spent 2-3 years finding these people and thousands of dollars networking with them to now bring them in front of you for $10, I think is what the ticket costs. So take advantage of it. It's huge if you're going to be a business owner. It helped me get to where I am now. And it can definitely easily help you guys. Same with those lunches he's saying. Like, meet those people. This is easy, free opportunities coming from someone in the industry. So Friday, Saturday next week, 11 to 6. Saturday is 9 to 3 in the ballroom. If you have any questions, I think we can get those answered. Megan's a great resource.
Right.
And then I'll leave some papers here for you guys to grab. They're just little flyers that...
Okay, so just on clarifying, if you go to Friday or Saturday, that's a networking event. That's 15 points. If you go to both Friday and Saturday, I'll give you 2 networking events for that because it really is a fantastic thing. If you want to go, you could also look at it extra credit later on if you need to. So go to it and get it done and enjoy it. It really is a great thing to be part of.
Friday 11 to 6. And then Saturday, 9 a.m. to 3. And it's a come and go.
Yeah, we don't wear ties in entrepreneurship, do we, Glenn?
We've got Cotopaxi CEO speaking. We've got Persnickety.
Okay.
We've got tons of different speakers. So.
All right, now, the funnest part of this job is I get to think about which speakers I want to have come, and I get to call them and invite them and extend the invitation. When I was looking at this semester, and we've really done a great job of getting a great variety of speakers, but the first person I asked is Glen Mella, because he is such a fixture. He has done so much in the business community and the startup community. He has a wealth of experience. I'm not going to give you his background because I'm counting on him to tell you all about himself. But Glen Mella, you're going to love hearing this guy. It's all yours, Glenn.
Good morning. I am wearing 2 microphones. I honestly feel like I'm wired up for the FBI. So if any of you have any international secrets or you're spies, you're on tape, sorry. You can hear me fine in the back and on the camera? Okay. Thank you. I just thought to make it easy on Mark, and I always feel uncomfortable during introductions anyway, that I would do it myself. So just to give you an idea of my career journey so far, and I'm excited to be in a room with current or future entrepreneurs and founders. I did my undergrad at Brigham Young and an MBA at the Kellogg School at Northwestern. I spent the next 9 years in large multi-billion-dollar revenue companies, learning what I could from any mentors I could find and talk to. I started functionally in marketing and product management in consumer companies, and then I moved that kind of one way back in the 90s into tech. That was pursuant to a move to Utah, and I've worked now in the last almost 30 years at just about every stage, from early stage, angel and venture funded, on through kind of mezzanine rounds and private equity investment. I've been part of 6 companies in the last 30 years, 2 of which have made it on the NASDAQ as IPOs, and 4 of which were acquired. The smallest one being 18 million and the largest one being 1.5 billion. And all you get from that is a whole bunch of good experiences. And the goal is to make new mistakes and not repeat your old ones. So that's what I'm hoping to do. Now, let me just talk about what it means in my idea to be a founder. Do you know that it's both a noun and a verb? Most of you know the noun side. Yeah, you start a company and you come up with a great idea and get the business funded. And do you know what founder means? Like as in the Titanic foundered? It means sink or fail or collapse or become submerged. So that's a funny word that we use to describe this industry. And many of us, most of the days in our careers, we feel like this, pulling our hair out. None of you ever feel that way, do you? Or ever in school, or it's too early in the semester for anybody to feel that way yet. But you ask yourself often when you are getting a business off the ground, what was I thinking? What possessed me to think I wanted to do this for a living? I must be a glutton for punishment. Why? Because most startup endeavors don't succeed, actually. The statistic not too many years ago was 1 in 10,000 ever actually make it as an IPO company. Now, there can be other outcomes for companies that would improve those odds. You're always fundraising. Your sort of MVP or 1.0 version of your product drives you crazy, usually, and sometimes your customer's crazy. Murphy's Law is everywhere, every day. Your health suffers and your family forgets your name. And that's sometimes what happens. And there are statistics that tell you all of the reasons why businesses don't make it. So you can just stare at that list. We don't have to go through it. But there's well-published ones that have to do with market fit or funding. A whole lot of people think, oh, I got the best idea. It's the best mousetrap. The world will be the path to my door. And many of those great ideas get left on the laboratory floor or in the universities because they didn't get appropriate capital behind it or an execution machine behind it that they needed. And yet, all you see is guys that look like this, that have made it, and they're billionaires, and they make it look so easy. Like, do those guys look stressed? They don't, do they? Of course they don't. Of course they don't. And everybody in the world will give you advice on how to succeed. There are a plethora, I'm sure you've read some of these, as have I. There are a plethora of examples and case studies and people who have been there, done that, about different aspects, right? From creative thinking to being a multiplier and making everybody around you better than they are, to, diversity and inclusion in the workforce, to companies, the difference between good and great. All those things you can find out there with business literature. And my invitation for you to think about every single day from now on till you're kind of done, and is, do I love what I'm doing? And I will always be grateful to my father, not a businessman. He was a pediatrician. He was a doctor. And I watched him practice medicine for 40 years. Actually, they finally had to say, okay, Dr. Mella, you're done. And every day he would tell me how he rolled out of bed in the morning loving his work. I could always tell that because he was always flirting with babies in line at the grocery store, and which was awkward, and you can't really do that anymore, but he did. So I have brought today for you to think about a little discussion on what I consider 6 things that all great leaders do, both in business and in life. And if you aspire to lead an organization, whether it's part of a big company like a project or a product team, or a division one day, or your own enterprise, then these are some things I hope you would think about, and I'm happy to share the slides afterwards so you don't have to worry about capturing every word. But here are the 6 things, and yes, Coach K is one of my examples of a great leader. But here's what I think great leaders do. They lead with passion and intense determination. Now, we all have different persona types, so that doesn't always mean type A in your face, but they lead with conviction. They attract and keep really great teams around them. Okay, nobody can really do it alone. If you think you can be, just Michael Jordan or Kobe in business, it usually doesn't work, or LeBron, it usually takes a team. And so part of achieving greatness is being able to build and keep that team. They also help define a really clear and a winning strategy. Like, we've got something that the world needs. They may not even know about it yet, but boy, wait till they find out. The next 3 things they do is, behind that great idea, they develop the ability to execute, really solid execution capability, so that you deliver what you're telling the world you're going to deliver, and you do so well and consistently. Great leaders are role models. They show you aspirational behavior, and it just rolls off of them naturally. In fact, that's why they're good at building teams and getting people to follow them in their organizations, because they do that so well. And then not just individually, but they build cultures of role model behavior. And I call it contagious cultures and great morale, where you're sitting on an airplane and somebody says, hey, what do you do? Where do you work? And in your brain, in just a few milliseconds, you go, I'm so glad you asked me, because you can't wait to tell the person next to you about your organization. It's that kind of culture. Okay, so is that an okay list? I'd love to just explore with some examples, each one of those. Okay, leads with passion. Maybe even a little bit of obsession, okay? I've seen it now for 3 decades in my career. There is definitely, in many, many organizations, this notion of a self-fulfilling prophecy, or Pygmalion effect, where because the founders and the leaders believe you can do it, that conviction is like 80% of the battle. Because you are going to have speed bumps and obstacles. It's always the case. Almost any great company on the Utah landscape and globally will tell you their stories of difficulty, getting lift, getting it off the ground. And so you've got to really, really be the kind of person that absolutely is convinced and knows how to tell everybody, both in your organization and everybody that you're trying to convince, how and why you're going to succeed. And do that with absolute conviction. Founders, you should always be your best salespeople. Even when you go hire the best chief revenue officer or SVP of sales, wherever she is around the globe, and you get her to come join your team, you should also be equally as good at, quote unquote, bringing home the bacon and selling your product or service or engagement or whatever it is, because that just always keeps you connected. I always invite founders, learn everything you can about the business. Today, I'm actually leading a science and technology company, and I'm not a scientist. I got a whole bunch of PhD chemists in my organization, and my little MBA isn't as impressive as their credentials in the world of science. And yet, we make a good team together. But I've tried to learn a lot about liquid chromatography. My company sells a little portable lab instrument, and our customers are some of the biggest companies, 11 of the biggest pharmaceuticals. We've sold it to NASA. They're going to put it on the space station. I mean, we're this little nobody company in Provo, and yet we're, I'm learning things about science I never even knew were possible, because that's just part of how we're going to go to market. Okay, so the first thing is just to lead with that passion and that conviction. Now, there are times, by the way, I should say, let me back up on that. There are times when, if you're really listening to the marketplace and listening to the customers, you may find out, oh, I thought we were on the wrong path, but I've now learned we're not. And so sometimes a pivot, or sometimes even scuttling a business and trying, or a product and trying it again, is what the world tells you, or customers tell you. Don't be dissuaded if that ever happens. Most of the great entrepreneurs that you've heard of in the world have at least had one or more failures before whatever they did that got them to the promised land. Okay, number two is this idea of building great teams around you. And, in this audience, there's just kind of a bell curve here of organizations that you'll be involved with, large and small, global versus regional. It could even be a ma and pa family business that does really well financially. But whatever the case may be, these are just some things. I know that last week you already had a great lecture on networking, so I'll just put a little accent mark on that and say, I think always, as individuals and as companies, we are networking. You're always looking for opportunities to be in the conversation, to be relevant, to learn. Years ago, I was at an event in downtown Salt Lake City. It was a little mixer, tech mixer or something, and this young, bright-eyed, blonde-haired guy came up to me and he goes, Glen Mella, I've been following your career. He put his hand out to shake my hand, and I said, hello. And I said, who are you? He said, I'm Josh James, and I have a little company that's just getting off the ground, which later became mycomputer.com, which became Omniture, which later he sold for $2 billion, and post-IPO, and then he founded Domo, and some of you know that company. So this is a guy who was networking from early in his career and looking for people that he could learn from and make connections with. In organizations, you're always looking for your next hire. It's always funny to me when people say, is your company hiring now? Because to me, that's a universal yes. Are you kidding? For the right people, for the right individual who could change our trajectory? Absolutely, we are. Now, I know companies have policies and budgets and all of that, but I just think you're always, especially if you are the founder, you're always looking for those people. And the three things I look for are super easy. Yeah, like you can come up with all kinds of complicated formulas for success in individuals. I think it's simple: smart, motivated, and nice. Those are my three. Now, by smart, I mean brilliant, left brain skills, good analytical thinker. By motivated, I mean almost compulsive, just the kind of person who's always thinking about how to do things better and knows how to find work-life balance, but is very, very motivated and a self-starter. And then nice, guess what? People have to want to play in your sandbox. If you're a prima donna, if you're a diva, if you always need to be the smartest one in the world, in the room, nobody's going to want to be on your team, and nobody's going to want to be part of that kind of an organization. So that's as simple as it is: smart, motivated, and nice. And when you find that combination in people, they're worth their weight in gold. We absolutely can recruit the best of the best to Utah. Plus, post-pandemic, A lot of organizations have virtual work environments or hybrid work environments anyway, so there's no limits. 20, 25 years ago, it was harder in tech. I would say to people, look, graduates from MIT and Caltech and other great organizations, why would they come to Utah? We lack diversity, we lack role models, we lacked a lot, but that's really changed in the last couple decades. And so those of you who plan and like living here and like the outdoors and some of the other benefits of Utah, there's a whole bunch of reasons why doing business here is great. For founders, I would offer that creating equity and ownership opportunities for others is always great. I had a friend once tell me equity is like manure. If you spread it around, things grow. And if you keep it all in one place, it just stinks. So think about that. And treat everyone like owners. Actually, most of your stakeholders will be owners anyway. So how you relate to them, how you invite them and offer their contributions into the organization is better if everybody feels like they're partners or owners in an organization. Point the way. That's what great leaders do. They define this clear winning strategy. Usually that means solving something that is massive pain to the world. And you can think about that on your own. What are some examples of companies that delivered a real solution to pain? Here's some examples for you to think about. Look at some of these brands and remember what life was like before that thing. Okay? Are any of you old enough to have ever written a paper check? I'm just curious. Oh, come on. All right, a few of you. But mostly you don't, right? I mean, today. Electronic payments and Venmo and everything have just changed so much of that part of life, as have, Siri or Alexa, as have Amazon Prime. You used to always, in the early days of e-commerce and buying things online, it was like, dang, how much is that going to cost for shipping? And so when people come along and solve a pain point with something, by the way, it helps if you've lived the pain. Like if you really want to have passion and conviction about a big idea, is if you yourself have felt that pain or lived in it in your job or in your life, that really helps. And the standard I like to invite people when you think you have a great idea, is it an order of magnitude better than what came before? Is it 10x better than what it's designed to replace? So that's just something for you to think about, okay? There are lots of examples. I'm an investor in a up-and-coming company here on the Utah landscape called Graphite Connect. And the guy that started it used to run procurement for Adobe. Procurement means onboarding and getting things from suppliers. It turns out big companies like Adobe have 2,000 suppliers, and there is a big formal process, some of it's even regulated, by what it takes to onboard every one of those 2,000 suppliers. Now, when you read that headline from that webpage, what does it tell you? Just that bold headline. It sounds 10x better, doesn't it? Minutes, not months, okay? Maybe even 1,000, maybe 3 orders of magnitude better. And that's actually what they do, and I won't get into the technology, but you should read up on them and get a little understanding. This is one of my investments. They don't all go great, but this one I'm pretty excited about. So think about your role in defining a clear winning strategy that can help build a profitable and rapidly growing business. Number 4 is great leaders become execution Jedi. You'll sometimes meet people that go, oh, I'm just an idea person. I just come up with an idea a minute, and yeah, I don't sweat the details. I don't get into that side of it. And I'm telling you that there's a real premium in the world of business and in the world of leadership for people who really, really like honing their skills around execution and precision and get really, really good at it. Part of how you do that is, at least my belief is, a real passion for communicating. I'm just convinced that an informed team is a motivated team. And the more you share information and keep people out of silos, the more likely you are to have a company that can deliver. As leaders, you need to demand excellence and demand quality. I used to help lead a successful Utah company in the home control and home automation space called Control 4. We were bringing the benefits of the smart home to a much broader market than just millionaires building new homes 20 years ago. And we put this business, when I was there, in 75 countries around the world. It's now in over 100. And we had these touch screens and different electronic devices around the house. One of our touch screens that was manufactured overseas started having some issues, and we had returns that were upwards of 8%, almost 1 in 10. Which in the world of electronics, our standards was less than 1%, more like 0.5%. And so this was a real lesson in months of scrambling to fix that, to write that, to make it good with customers, and then to demand from that point forward, we and our suppliers were always able to deliver outstanding quality. So that's one little lesson that's made a big difference in my life. The way I like to describe it is be willing individually and organizationally to make bold commitments. There's nothing better when a prospect is telling you, yeah, there's no way you guys could do that. And you say, yes, we can. And I'm signing up for it. You have my word. Boy, you talk about goosebumps and adrenaline and dopamine and everything. Everything's firing. And you go back to your organization and you rally the team and you know it's a stretch goal and you say, can we do it? And everybody joins hands together and says, yes, we're going to do it. We're going to deliver. So that's when powerful things happen in organizations. And part of how you do that when you make and keep bold commitments is you showcase and you champion and you reward and recognize those who do it in your organizations. So that's one of the other things that I think great leaders do. I mentioned be a role model. That really means walk the walk. Don't just talk about what it means to be a great leader, but people need to know you and refer to you. And if you treat people, frankly, the way as if they're family in your organization, you treat people with respect, you make people around you feel better and smarter. If you're that kind of a leader, that reputation will follow you. You will have people throughout your career want to be on your team, in your organization, or in your company. And that is really a great feeling when you go, gosh, could I build a high productivity team around me and retain it? And over the space of your career, that'll largely be a function of what kind of person you are and how you interact and whether or not you embody those aspirational traits. For example, my second to last bullet, trust your instincts and be willing to take a stand, right? I mean, stand up in front of the team with conviction and say, I know this is the direction we need to go and here's why. But don't forget to be teachable and make it about ideas, not about people. I'm always in meetings saying, hey guys, check the ego at the door. We're here to come up with the best ideas. That's why we're in an organization together, okay? So, and then finally, the sixth one is to build that contagious culture in the organization. We could actually do multiple lectures just on this, so you can just see the list. I mean, culture sort of fuels itself. Either you try to lead it and manage it, or it manages you. There are some companies, both in Utah and in the world, that have some pretty amazing cultures when you talk to people that work there. And it's not by accident. You can actually read their own statements about what kind of organization they aspire to be. Pluralsight is another one here in Utah that's built a great organization. One of the culture statements that I clipped years ago actually came from the founder of Starbucks. And just look at that list, left side and right side, for a second. And any of you that have already worked in companies where you didn't feel it was a great culture, you can probably relate to some of those things on the left-hand side. And often you articulate the kind of aspirational culture that you want, and then you go to work making it happen. Okay, it's day in and day out. You don't just write a culture statement and then it magically exists. Your decisions, your interactions, the way you operate over time is how you build a positive culture. And these are just some things that, at least in my own experience, have helped think about that. So, what are the ideal team member attributes? When you're looking to partner, to hire, to go into business with, what is it that you're ultimately looking for? This has been my list that I put together over years of my own experience. And, I didn't read it in a book. It's just been my own experience. People who like ownership. They like ownership of their product or their project, their brand or their company. They have a passion for metrics rather than, ooh, I don't like the numbers. In fact, they like to be their own biggest critics and be the first ones to read the numbers and get early indicators of things going positive or things going negative. And that's always helpful. Somebody who if you couldn't make it to a meeting or event, you 100% would be confident sending that individual in your place. A mature ambassador, somebody who would say with conviction, essentially deliver the same message you would. That's the kind of team members you want. Strong business acumen, like not afraid to look at a profit and loss statement, not afraid to dive in, roll up their sleeves, and get into the sales numbers and find out if something's going wrong in some part of the country or some part of the world, and really try to peel it back. As I said, willing to take a stand, but always willing to be taught, always willing to realize that there are brighter people that we should all learn from and listen to. And guess what, guys? The best predictor of this is your past performance. So more than anything that it says on your resume, usually people are going to want to know and talk to people you've worked with, partners of yours or managers of yours, to find out what kind of individual is he or she. A lot of people are freaked out about the economy right now. How many of you have read a negative headline in the last 3 months? Yeah, maybe, just a few. Okay, well, I don't want to sound like this old wise sage, but I just want to say I've been around a little longer, okay? These are the 3 post-World War II recessions before this one. And you could look at the numbers. By the way, I graduated college in the middle of this one. It was 16 months. Unemployment was almost 11% in the US. Do you know what the interest rate on my first house was? 15%. I'm not lying, okay? We were lucky because some were going at 18%. That was 1982, okay? And guess what? Here I am. It wasn't the end of the world. So I want you to just think, by the way, I wrote a little op-ed piece for a newsletter called Tech Buzz. If you're interested, I won't get into it now, but just go to Tech Buzz and Google, just type in deja vu or my name, Glen Mella, and you can read a little bit of research I did. But basically, here's my message. Okay, S&P 500 this year looks brutal, doesn't it? Who would want to be an investor during that year? Okay? Or that's 6 months, that's a year. Even more brutal, ouch. A lot of money lost, a lot of people with their 401ks down. And so we all get freaked out about the current moment. Guess what? If you back up and look at 2 years, how does that look? What about 5 years? Holy cow, okay? Here's what I want you to know. Since World War II, the average recession lasts 10 months. The average expansion lasts 57 months, okay? So don't freak out, all right? Today, in the US, there's all these debates. Are we in a recession already? How long have we been in a recession? Guess what? They already revised the GDP number upward from what they first thought like 3 months ago. It's flat. It's minus 0.6%. Not the end of the world. And guess what? Unemployment is still as low as it's been in 5 decades. So there are jobs out there everywhere, all right? I'm tired of hearing too many people say, I'm just going to give up on business. I'm going to go back to medical school or law school or whatever, okay? There is smooth sailing ahead, I promise, and I've seen these cycles. In fact, it's healthy for economies to expand and contract. It's not a bad thing. It's a normal part of what takes place. So take thoughtful risks and don't give up. If you just get one message from today, from me, it's that. Learn and get better and get smarter as you go. Optimize as you go. That may mean pivot. That may mean switch up your strategy. Measure everything you can. Learn from others. Just like Mark said, put it out there. Invite people to go have a meal with you or to just do a virtual chat with you so you could ask them a question or ask them, hey, what one or two principles have you learned that has helped in your career? Because the more you do that, the more you are building a long-term set of skills and knowledge and understanding. And I promise the best ideas and the best businesses haven't even been thought of yet. I just love looking at a room like this and thinking, what is the potential in your futures for the organizations you're going to be part of? So with that, I am going to just say one last thing, and this is more the lessons not just about in business, but lessons in life. I hope all of you will quickly think about the difference between the money that you feel you want to make to support yourself or your family versus making a difference in life. And one of the best pieces of literature I would refer you to would be the late Clayton Christensen, his book, How Will You Measure Your Life? Just to give you and me something to think about. It turns out that whenever you see a funeral and you see a hearse, you will never see a U-Haul truck behind it. Think about that. There are two guys sitting on a curb, and it was a really nice funeral. All the cars were BMWs and Porsches. And the one guy leans over to his buddy and he says, how much do you suppose he left? And his buddy said, all of it. All of it. Laugh. We leave it all behind anyway. So make a difference. Have fun in your careers. Make the world better. And guess what? When you do that, the money will take care of itself. Mark, well, you put this audience to sleep, or I did. All right, I left some time for any questions, just a minute or two before we have to break.
We've got 10 minutes for questions, so fire away. Ask him the hard
Hey, so how do you get past like the really hard stuff, man? Like I did a startup that didn't work out and I lost a lot of money, and you get beat up really bad. How do you like get back up? And
Mentally?
Yeah,
Is that what you mean?
emotionally as well?
Okay, that's what I meant. I just wondered if you meant like financially or reputation.
Mentally,
Okay.
emotionally.
Yeah, sure. I think you grab lessons from other parts of life. Like those of you that did team sports, you know what it's like to have both victory and defeat. Those of you that have been in a difficult family situation where all the responsibility fell on you at a younger age than maybe it does with others, you learn how to work through adversity and stuff. I don't think I have any special formula to that other than my life has been one of, I always tell myself, like when I'm running, I started this thing, I like doing long runs and long bike rides, and I often tell myself in the middle of the run when things are starting to hurt, I say to myself, the best part of my run is still ahead of me. And I try to believe that. And the body goes, okay, and you get a burst of adrenaline and you keep going. So I think it's kind of that way in a career. There is a formula for successful business. Besides that 10X idea, you have to surround it with a team that can execute. You have to raise sufficient capital to get it off the runway. And then you have to sort of predict and deliver consistently. And if you do that, companies will be successful. I think I skipped over a bullet on there. There's a big obsession with young people about the exit. People are always talking about the exit. I've even seen people introduced. Give a round of applause to Mr. So-and-so who's had 4 exits. Okay, that's not really the point. I think you should focus on entering and growing and building companies that are built to last. Not that you care about ultimately. Like one of the great reasons an IPO is a wonderful milestone is it's usually a great indicator. You went from a handful of shareholders to now thousands or millions of shareholders, and that company's probably gonna last. It's gonna have a lot more capital on the balance sheet. So I think, mentally there is a lot of self-will, but realize, man, life is forgiving and you have a lot of opportunity to learn from things that you do, so don't give up. Thank you for that question. Any others? Yes, sir.
What do you do on like a day-to-day basis to handle stress?
Yeah, what do I do on a day-to-day basis to handle stress? I told you at the beginning my father was a physician. One day he shadowed me at work. And as we were driving home, he said, son, tell me about stress in your career. And I said, well, Dad, and I was running a pretty decent sized organization. There were like 2,000 employees. And I said, you know, Dad, I feel stress because whether I do my job well or not, 2,000 families are going to have ongoing employment and food to eat and a house to live in. And he looked at me and he said, now remember, this is a doctor. And he said, yeah, but wouldn't you agree that that is a fairly constant low-grade stress? And I burst out laughing because to a physician, right, when life hangs in the balance, you're in the ER. And by the way, my dad was a pediatrician, so when he was doing CPR, it was with his thumbs for 4 hours on a rib cage that if he did it too hard, he could damage. And sometimes the baby lived and sometimes the baby didn't live. So that was a profound stress where you had to go tell mom and dad that their child didn't survive. So I sometimes tell myself at the end of a really bad day, did anybody die? No. Did anything burn down? No. Okay, so it wasn't that bad of a day compared to some people. And it's like I've been in traffic and had my own little version of road rage and going, oh, I'm so mad, oh, I can't believe I'm being delayed, only to find out when I get up there that it was a fatality or a serious injury accident. And then all of a sudden, God teaches me a lesson and says, hey, it was a lot worse day for that person. So I think I try to tell myself something like that. Yes, sir.
You brought up measure everything that you can, and I just wonder, don't you worry about like getting caught up in the noise of all of the data if you really are capturing a large amount?
Oh, it's always hard. And that's part of why different people on a team have different skill sets around abstraction and abstract thinking. So sure, embedded in that is the notion that you learn over time the key indicators or the metrics that really matter and that are the drivers of your business. And you focus with real conviction like a laser beam on those things. There may only be 3, but to get to those 3, you might have to measure 20. So all I'm saying is don't wait till your customers tell you that your product has a problem. Don't wait till, the marketplace tells you and your sales go down. I love teams that like to be the first ones to go, hey, there might be an issue here. Some organizations create a culture where escalating bad news, you get beat up for it. Like, hey, don't go into her office and tell her something's bad. She's going to chew your head off, or he is, right? And I'm saying, no, blow that culture up. You want the best information to come to, all aspects of the organization so that you'll make good decisions, because that's how you respond quickly. Great question. Maybe 2 more? We got time? Okay, you tell me when, Mark, and I won't stress about it. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
So on one of your slides, you had something say that treat everyone like an owner. But I've also heard a saying about how sometimes you can't expect your employees to work as hard as they
Yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so that's fair enough. I think part of role model behavior is, I don't know how many years of my career, I was the guy that turned on the lights in the morning and turned them off at night. That was just where I was because of my conviction, and maybe it was because it was my capital that was tied up in the business. There's nothing like putting your own money at risk that teaches you that. But as I mentioned to you, I looked for that motivation attribute where those around me were equally as committed, but I didn't really expect the same out of them. Now, I raised 8 kids. I had ecclesiastical related responsibilities that took me out of the home a lot, and I was leading companies. So yeah, you have to learn, how to balance and how to find those things that matter the most. Since you're on that subject, I recently had a conversation with now my grown married kids. And because I started wondering, during the really hard years when, I was building a worldwide business and did a lot of international travel, I asked a couple of my kids, man, was I just absentee father during those 3 or 4 years? I mean, was I just gone? And it was interesting what one of my sons said to me. He said, Dad, the things that I remember, you were there. Like, when I hit that home run in the playoff game, you were there screaming your head off in the bleachers. And when I was in that dumb Mr. Orem High competition, there you were with your iPhone recording it. So I think I found a way to be at the things that mattered, but there were times where I just had to make a trade-off and say to my spouse, honey, I'm not gonna make it to that one, can you cover me? So I don't think I expected everybody else to do that, but I certainly found that it was easy that if the boss or the founder was, other people wanted to rise to that occasion and put in the same kind of energy. Does that help? Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, stay up here for just a second. I want to ask a couple of questions. So how do you like people to connect with you? You've got a couple hundred students that would love to connect with you. What do you recommend?
Sure, LinkedIn is fine. Glen Mella at Gmail is fine. One N in Glen, M-E-L-L-A. And I always love hearing from people. If you want to connect, if you have questions, if you want to hang out, whatever.
Yep.
That'd be fine.
So if I were you, I would send out a LinkedIn request to Glenn, say, hey, I loved your class.
You don't have to say that.
If you want to tell him one or two things you really liked about it, that always makes the speaker feel good, right? Sure. But I want you to recognize Glenn is a tremendous individual, a lot of experience, nicest guy I'll ever meet. And he's well connected with other people. If they're looking for potential connections for jobs, are you a good connection for that?
So here's what I've often done, and this has worked pretty well with some people. If you go to any number of these lists, like they just published one called the Fast 50, there's one called the Intermountain West 50 or 100. If you find one of those lists and go through all the cool companies that interest you, anywhere, and then you look and see if I'm connected to anybody, there's a good likelihood if it's in the Utah landscape, I might be connected to somebody in the C-suite. Then ping me and say, hey, Glenn, how well do you know the chief revenue officer or the head of product or whatever at this company? Sometimes the CEO, and there's a good chance I might know them, or I'm 1 degree separated in terms of placing a resume or making a recommendation. I did that for my son when he was at BYU looking for a summer internship. I think he had me connect to 7 companies that way, and he got 5 interviews. So sometimes it works.
Use that. I really think that, one, he's taken the time to be here and share his experience, but 2, he's willing to keep connecting and helping any way he can. He's just that kind of guy. So feel free to utilize that. And let's hear it for Glenn.
Thank you.